I'm always very excited when it comes time for Gamecock Teaching Days. This is our 5th annual Gamecock Teaching Days, the event where we showcase some of our most innovative and successful teachers in the College of Arts and Sciences. And today we are very pleased to showcase Dr. Dawn Campbell. I've worked with Dawn for a long time. First met her when I worked over at the CTE, but later she participated in a number of programs offered by the Incubator for Teaching Innovation here in the college. And most recently, she is a recipient of one of our McCausland Innovation Grants. She is Senior Instructor and Undergraduate Director in the Department of Women and Gender Studies, where for many years she has taught a number of their online and also face-to-face courses. So we welcome Dawn today, and she's going to present on the best practices that she incorporates into her 3-week intensive winter term course, Women's Studies 112, which is the Introduction to Women's and Gender Studies. So thank you so much, Dawn, for joining us.
Thank you for that introduction, Christy. Good to see everybody. Okay, so welcome everybody. I wanted to share some best practices for teaching. Like Christy mentioned, the 3-week 100% asynchronous class, which is, quite condensed and accelerated during winter session. I've also taught these 3 weeks and classes in the summer. It works really well for the intro course. Obviously there's a lot of content to pack in 3 weeks, but it can really work well if you're very organized and you structure it in a certain way. And so I just wanted to go through some things that I've learned over the years teaching this 3-week winter session. I believe I've been doing that for about maybe 4 or 5 years now. Could be longer. Time is quite different than it used to be, I think, post-COVID, or I don't know if we're post, but since COVID started. So go ahead and get started here. The agenda, I definitely want to emphasize the importance of communication in teaching these 3-week courses, and also share with you my course setup and some formatting, and then some tips, again, things I've learned, and then we'll end with Q&A from you all. So one of the things I really wanted to emphasize is the importance of clear, consistent communication. So all of that alliteration there, clear, consistent communication is key. That is, sounds like a cliche sometimes, but it's so true in these 3-week courses. And you have to remember that you're not meeting face-to-face with the students when it's 100% asynchronous online. So that's even more, there's even more importance on making sure you're communicating regularly, consistently, and clearly with the students. So one thing I do every semester with these 3-week courses, and I do this with my full semester online courses as well. So I teach the 112, the intro course, in both full semester format and also 3-week. And then in the summer, sometime I teach 4-week or even 6-week classes. So I've done it in many different formats, in many different time frames. But I always include a welcome email. And the welcome email highlights important points from the syllabus. And I'm going to actually, I'll show you my welcome email when we get to the Blackboard screen in a few minutes. I'll actually show you some examples of that. One thing you can do with the welcome email, this is what I do each semester. I just kind of create, I have an initial draft that I created of the welcome email, and then I'm able to edit it each semester. So you can edit it to include, update your dates and any other information that you need to update, and send that out under announcements on Blackboard. And again, I'll send that to you. It's important to stress the acceleration component of the course for these 3-week courses, because a lot of times students have never taken a 3-week course, or maybe they've just never really heard of, a winter course or whatever it is. So kind of thinking about your audience, and what students might need out of that. And I think one of those things is just stressing that acceleration and the importance of staying on task, organized, and adhering to the course schedule. I also sent out a weekly assignment reminder. I usually send these out on Mondays, usually first thing Monday mornings, because the way that my classes are structured is a week is Monday through Sunday. So my students usually submit their assessments on Sundays, or their final assessments for the week on Sundays. So then I'm able to, we start over on Monday for the next week. So that's a great time to get those weekly assignment reminder announcements in. And I just include, reminders, like general reminders, and then specific reminders for the assignments and assessments that are due that week. And yes, students should be looking at the course schedule, reviewing the course schedule daily. But as we know, in the real world, sometimes that doesn't happen. But they might view and review the weekly assignment reminder on Mondays. And they should, right? So then you can include all of the information that you need there as well. And I think this is just so important for these 3-week courses. Also, what I've found important is email availability. So maybe during a regular semester, when you get busy as the instructor, you might not get to an email from a student for a couple days. I think with the 3-week courses, it's really important to get back with those students within 24 hours. And I include that on my syllabi and my read this first section, which I'll go over next, so that students have that comfort level and that confidence in you as the instructor, and that security that they're going to have, they're going to be able to get in contact with you, because again, you're not meeting even online with these students. So their only option to communicate with you is through email, or maybe you set up a discussion board where they can post a question or comments there. A lot of instructors who teach online are doing that, I know, and I do that occasionally. But I think email is just a really, just kind of being available through email has really worked really well for me for these 3-week courses. And the read this first section, you can title that however you want. For me, it's usually read this first, and that gets their attention, and I usually have it in bold. So that, and I include that first, I'll show you in just a moment on Blackboard, so that students can read through each component of that read this first section, so they know what the expectations are. A lot of that is just reiterated from what you have on the syllabus, but I think it's a great kind of snapshot for them to read, particularly those who maybe don't read the syllabus in detail. It's a great way to do that, and then they can always go back to the read this first section if they forget something along the way during the 3 weeks. You can also include your contact information there as well. So I wanted to go to Blackboard now. Okay, so this was the winter session of 112 that I taught this past winter. So it's listed as spring, of course. And that's something too I wanted to mention that has come up quite a bit over the last couple of years in teaching these winter session classes. Students often register for the course, but they're not aware that it's a winter course and it's 3 weeks. So making that really clear to students, and maybe even emailing the class prior to the course beginning, like the winter session beginning, can be really helpful, because some students will remain in the class. Others will say, I don't want to do a 3-week or whatever. Most of them, that from my experience, they stay in the class and they do well. But I think it's good to kind of be very clear, because these winter classes are listed under the spring schedule, so it can get really confusing for students. So just making sure that they're very clear on what they're getting into, like the 3-week, and what the expectations are, I think is really important. Okay, so just to kind of show you, we're under announcements now, so you can see all of the communication that I have with them over 3 weeks. So one thing, and this is under my tips slide, so I'll go ahead and share it with you now. One issue and challenge, I should say, is always the textbook. So if you have a required textbook for your 3-week course, particularly during a winter course, you want to make sure to email the class ahead of time. And you can see I start the end of November, like right after Thanksgiving break. I start emailing the classes, and I'll let them know the textbook requirement, because we do have a requirement for 112. And unfortunately, our 112 is only available, or fortunately, only available through our university bookstore. So that can pose a challenge to students in an online class. And particularly, the bookstore does have limited hours over winter break. So keeping all of that in mind is very important, and communicating that with students ahead of time, I have found to be very helpful. So even though it may seem really early, if you're emailing, if the winter session begins usually a day or two after Christmas. So I'm emailing them 3-4 weeks in advance of it, but I don't think that's too soon from my experience, because a lot of them just go ahead and order the textbook and have it shipped to them. And many students, remember, during winter break are not on campus. They're maybe in another state, they're back home, or across the country, or whatever. So another reason to get the textbook information to them sooner. So I send a couple reminders for the textbook, and then, or maybe a few reminders now that I can see it. With the link, I always include the ordering link for the bookstore and the information that is needed. And then this is an example of my welcome email. So I just say, welcome to Introduction to Women's and Gender Studies. I really stress when the course begins and ends, that it's fully online, 100% asynchronous, and accelerated. So all of that I think is very important to stress to students. Also, that the winter session is only 3 weeks, but content covers a full semester. Keep in mind as you navigate the course. And then I go into introducing myself briefly, and I talk again about the required textbook information, the semester assessment requirements. So they have that in the syllabus, but I think it's important to stress here that their introduction will be the first thing, and then some of the other assessments that they'll have. I have a very strict no late work policy. And I think this is really important in the winter sessions. Of course, every instructor sets their own policies, but I think there's just no time to get behind in these 3-week sessions. And so for me, the no work policy worked really well. I don't do extra credit for these 3 weeks. It's just a really condensed, busy time. And I think you have to really think about how you'll want to set your late work policy, make up work policy, before you get into really setting up your syllabus and expectations. And then also in the intro email, I also outline what they need to do, all of the steps they need to do for week 1. And I think this is really important because a lot of them have never taken 100% asynchronous online course. Certainly, a lot of them have never taken a 3-week online course. And so having these steps outlined for them, just kind of numbered, I think can be really helpful. I know this seems like maybe a lot of work for you as the instructor, but it's just, I think it's helpful for students, and then that in turn is helpful for the instructor. So I always ask them to read this first section, and then of course review the syllabus and schedule, read about me and how, what my contact information, where it's located. And then this is also under my tip slide, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. Provide an introduction. And so actually Helen Lee and those in On Your Time have kind of taught me the importance of this, of stressing this and requiring this of students for winter session, is having that introduction due on the first day of class. So the first day of winter session for this year was Monday, December 26th. And so their introduction was due that day. That allows for a couple things. So if you have the introduction or some version of that, whatever your version is on that first day, that allows you to see who's engaged, who's participating in class. It also gives the students an opportunity for that student-to-student interaction. They get to know who are the other students in the class, what are their interests. I always ask, I ask them to share one fun fact about themselves. A lot of them talk about their travel. They talk about their pets. They talk about their other hobbies and interests and things. And then that sparks a conversation with other students. So I really like the introduction, and that's something I plan to keep. I always have that as part of all of my online classes, even the full semester, particularly because they have more interaction over the course of the semester. So that's something that I really stress that I think is very important to do and require. And then I include their readings for that first week, any lectures, and finally other assessments that are due. And so that's the welcome email. And then, like I said, I send out the week 2 assignment reminder, and then final week reminders, all of that. So I think that type of communication may seem simple, but it really makes a huge impact on the overall class and the individual students as well. And then, of course, there's a Meet Your Professor tab here that I include. Not sure why there are two. So you can include your information, like your contact information. I always tell them I'll return their email within 24 hours. I do virtual office hours for winter session by appointment, so they can contact me if they want to schedule a virtual appointment. I think maybe all the time I've taught winter session, maybe 1 or 2 students have taken advantage of that opportunity, but typically they'll just email questions and things. And then, of course, the syllabus and schedule tab. I include a Word document and a PDF for accessibility, and then structuring the weekly modules into 3 weeks. I have found very helpful for winter session. It really simplifies things and helps the students with navigating all of the content. And then discussions, again, you have your introductions. I also provide an open forum, which is an optional discussion forum where students can discuss the content. They're also allowed to post links to articles and things that are related to the course. I always go, I check those to make sure they're appropriate. And then the chapter discussions are there. So again, setting up your course in a user-friendly way, only include the essentials. This is only 3 weeks. You don't want to complicate it any more than it's already, intense. And one thing that I'm actually looking at doing is converting all of my online classes to Blackboard Ultra. I'll certainly be doing this when I develop the online degree program. That will be launched in fall of 2025. But in the meantime, I'm really liking what I know about Blackboard Ultra so far, with the really clean look and the consistency, which I think is just so important in these online classes. Consistency is key, communication is key. And so that may be something that you want to consider, is building your course in Blackboard Ultra. Because I think eventually a lot of our online classes are going to transition to that. I believe Lydia can probably talk more about that. But yes, including the essentials only and making it very accessible for students is important. I've already talked about student introductions and textbook information, and reminding them early in the semester or before the semester begins about that textbook information if you have a required textbook.
So yes, people can just email Dawn C at mailbox. So thank you, everybody, for your attendance. Thank you, Dawn, for presenting, Amanda for facilitating, and Lydia and Rachel for all the work you've done to set up this fantastic Gamecock Teaching Days series. Everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you.